6.5%, was it? Is that what the current odds are of the Stanley Cup?
Well, and if you look at the round-by-round progression, the Stanley Cup favorite is the Vancouver Canucks.
Like, what a time to be alive!
Talking you through every goalie controversy, scoring slump, and draft lottery bust, this is the C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com. Here they are, the best starting lineup we could afford under the salary cap. Chris, Matt, Anna, and Adam.
Welcome to another episode of the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Anna and Chris. I'm Chris. She's Anna. I was thinking about what I would say prior to our just, pre-hit the record button conversation. I was going to totally, say that I have replaced you with someone else or something like that. Because if you recall, we talked about the repercussions to your attendance at Game 7 and the possibility of what may transpire.
Yeah, I guess it's too late to replace me, but...
You're here, I forgot.
For recording. Yeah.
Maybe we'll replace you in time for the next episode. How about that?
Maybe we will. Yeah, unfortunately I am cursed. I think I was probably cursed back in 2011, though, when I chose Canucks as my team.
Is you've maintained the curse, and it is your fault this team has seen limited to no success. Yeah. It wasn't Benning's fault. It was Anna Forthe's fault.
Yeah, it was definitely not Jim Benning, driving this club into the ground. It's definitely me.
Yeah, I mean, if for some reason you've reached this point of the show, and it's been some time since you were curious how the Canucks were doing, they're done. They lost Game 7. They be out of the playoffs. But we'll obviously talk a little bit about how that all went down and what that, means to us and, whether we're ever going to get over it. We'll talk about the, postseason presser that took place. I mean, it's always interesting to hear some of the things that the players will now open up about. So candidly, we'll get into that. We'll get into the future of the show. We're sticking around, but hey, it's the off season for us now. So that generally means a slight change. And us, we'll probably go off the rails here, there, everywhere. Like right now, when I can say that we no longer need to be sponsored by a car dealership, unless a car dealership just wants to sponsor us.
Yeah.
Because I put a deposit down on a new car. So
funny. But yeah. Chris now has a vehicle, or a promise of a vehicle.
A promise of a vehicle. I've got a deposit down, and I got to get the money sorted out, and I got until Friday. So it could be that by the time the next episode rolls around, maybe I have new wheels, or maybe I'm $500, less of. I don't know. I hope that's not the.
I hope that's not the
door
case.
That gets opened. Yeah, exactly. Might as well just talk about this now. Instead of waiting to the end of the show, as is our practice, or I guess our modern practice, because in the old days, like we're talking way back in 2013, 14, 15, what have you, we would take the off season off.
Yeah.
Like we'd record periodic episodes sort of as the playoffs sort of wound up in the free agent frenzy, and then we'd be off for the summer. I think there are actually some Canucks podcasts that still do that. In the more modern era, we go to bi-weekly. And that means this episode is here. Next week's episode to the ether, because that's the off week.
Schrodinger's episode of both doesn't exist, but mainly doesn't, because yes, we will not be here next week, but every other week or thereabouts. Obviously, we'll have to adjust scheduling corresponding to the draft and free agency, but. Yeah.
I mean, yes and no. Like, we're going to record an episode that'll go live the week of June 10, the week of June 24, the week of June 8. And I get that free agent frenzy will have frenzied by that point, but July 1 is a holiday, and it happens to be a day when an episode would normally go live, which, we're not going to get into it. But yeah, I mean, that's sort of the cadence. And unless the NHL decides to start the season before October...
Yeah.
We'll probably continue the bi-weekly cadence throughout that. Anywho, let's talk about the Vancouver Canucks and their ceremonious or unceremonious exit from the Stanley Cup playoffs. I mean, we were holding on hope that the Vancouver Canucks would come home having been beaten so badly in Edmonton that they would have licked those wounds, learned the lessons, realized that Stuart Skinner was back in the net, and gosh darn it, the Canucks could be playing the Dallas Stars right about now. We thought that. We when we recorded last, I think you and I still held on to this optimism.
Yeah. It wasn't as strong, obviously, when we were 3-2 up in the series and we had, 2 shots at the Edmonton Oilers, and then after that disastrous Game 6. It wasn't as strong, but we still thought, Canucks are at home. Stuart Skinner, as you say, back in net, that offers some possibility. That was that dangerous hope, Chris.
Yeah, and hope kills. It was interesting. The start of Game 7, the fans got the memo. They needed to bring the energy. Mm-hmm. And it felt to me that Vancouver was attempting to do what they could to feed off that energy. But the problem was that they had not yet learned that lesson from Game 6, that to score goals, one must take shots.
Yeah, and you'd think it'd be a pretty obvious lesson, especially with a weaker goalie in net, that, test that goalie early on, early and often. But that didn't seem to be the case.
No, I mean, the first period was
so lackluster.
Yeah, I mean, Silas doing everything that he could possibly do to keep the Canucks in the game early, being relied on to make some pretty outstanding saves. And get this, Anna. The Edmonton Oilers got into a little bit of penalty trouble early in the game, because it was sort of late in the first. But Petey ate a stick, broke him open. Ryan McLeod goes to the box with a double minor for high sticking. Mm-hmm. And who, dare I ask, had the best scoring opportunity on that double minor?
It wasn't the Vancouver Canucks.
No, Artur Silas was called upon to make a short-handed
bailout
breakaway save.
Yep.
And the Vancouver Canucks, I don't know, but I don't think they got a shot in those 4 minutes on net. I mean, they did attempt to throw the puck towards the net, but in the entire first period, the Vancouver Canucks mustered 2 shots, which, if you were taking notes, was a problem in Game 6, and now it's still remaining to be a problem here in Game 7. But by golly, Seeloff standing on his head, the Vancouver Canucks get into the intermission, and I'm like, oh, Tockett's got to be telling them, guys, the moment is now. Mm-hmm. And I think the message was received, but apparently they didn't realize that Edmonton wasn't just going to stop shooting themselves.
Yeah, it was not a lie down moment either. Yeah.
Cody Cece's goal, minute 16 into the second period, just took the energy out of the building. You could almost sense that Edmonton was going to do something to put, their foot down on the Canucks. And that was it. They were playing with confidence. It did not, have Edmonton then park the bus. No, they continued to throw pucks towards the net. And, only a few minutes later, Zach Hyman goes and gets a 2-0 lead. And at that point, I'm like, oh no, man, this is a memory from 2011 where the Vancouver Canucks, the only way they could win is the goaltender got them a shutout. And this is not knocking Seeloffs here.
Yeah, I mean, he got us to that point, right?
Yeah,
he's doing what he can.
Bailed his team out in the first period, and he's at one point. I'm commenting. I'm like, if the Canucks want a goal, maybe Seeloffs needs to take the puck up the ice.
Yeah, it was just one of like you said, very 2011 vibes of getting completely deflated by one goal from the opposition.
The Canucks did kill off a penalty. I should, give them credit because Edmonton very good power play. They killed off a penalty between the CC and Hyman goals. But the problem is when you continue to take penalties, eventually that pretty good power play scores goals. And when Sam Lafferty went to the sin bin, feels shame for 2 minutes, unfortunately for him, he got set free before the 2 minutes were up. And that's because Ryan Nugent-Hopkins dagger to the heart. 3-0. And at this point, I'm like, oh, man. Now, the Canucks, to their credit, had started to get the puck on Skinner. But Skinner, to his credit, seemed up for the task. Like, he knew the assignment. Okay, I gotta stop enough of these shots so that we win.
Yeah, and Stuart Skinner had a better game than he has had in a while. Like, and maybe that helped him build into game one of the next round, where he actually played very decently. But yeah, I mean, Evan Bouchard has had a great series, like such a great series. I've always rated him pretty highly, but like stepped up massively offensively in that series too. And it's just like, the goals by themselves weren't like, oh, okay, well, it wasn't disheartening as a whole, being like, okay, you're beaten by some good goals. Maybe you can, blame yourselves a little bit, but like, they were good goals and they're a good offensive team. It was just the lack of anything in return that was the frustrating part.
It certainly was. And you're down 3-0. You're struggling to get pucks on net. Again, discounting the increased effort in the second period. So third period rolls around, and now Edmonton's decided to not park the bus, but follow the
ease off.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like, follow the game plan that we're up by 3. Let's not do anything silly to get this team, thinking they might be able to get back into it. If we have the puck, Vancouver does not. Right? It felt more like Edmonton was playing a game of keep away.
Yeah.
Shots on goal for the third period totaled 7. There were 2 shots from the Oilers. There were 5 from Vancouver. Knowing that, and that alone, would you have the Vancouver Canucks coming back within a post of tying it up?
Yeah, it certainly was it felt like it came out of nowhere, and then the last 10 minutes of the game were the most spellbinding, exciting hockey.
Yeah, I don't know who it was on the ice for Edmonton. That it was just a brutal giveaway to Connor Garland in front of the net, and Garland put that puck past Skinner.
Tenacious player.
Yeah, I mean,
in a while.
And about midway through the third, a little bit past that, but the energy is suddenly back. Fans are just geared up. And we'd seen the Vancouver Canucks do this before. I mean, only a series previous, the Vancouver Canucks decided that, being down many goals late into the third period was not a problem. Heck, the first game of this series, the Vancouver Canucks decided to spot the Edmonton Oilers a hell of a head start and found a way to muster a win. So Edmonton also understood, not good. But Vancouver seemed to suddenly flip a switch. They started to play with confidence. They had some swagger. Yes, they only got a total of 5 shots on Skinner over the course of that period. But you could almost sense that the Canucks had that second goal in them. And if they got it early enough, that there might be that opportunity to potentially get the third. So at 15:24, with the Vancouver Canucks maintaining some serious ozone time, Philip Hronek, with a one-timer from the point, scores his first goal of the postseason, and the building goes mad.
Yeah.
I presume you probably, were doing a very polite clap. Or
a little golf clap, 2 fingers on the top of one hand,
Yeah, I figured. Being
very
from
civilized.
the old country and all that. Yeah, exactly. None of us like colonial, monsters that just go absolutely caveman.
Yeah, it was very cool. I mean, I was with someone who's never seen a playoff game in person, not seen that many Canucks games in person at all, and yeah, it was very exciting for them. So I'm glad they got to see some excitement, even though it just kind of once again reintroduced that terrible element of hope.
Yeah. Quinn Hughes pretty much never took a shift off in the third period. I'm pretty sure he had a 20-minute period, if not pretty darn close to that. Like his, oh gosh. I mean, let me see if I can find his shift tracker here. If I was better prepared, I would have already had it up. But Quinn Hughes played, I want to say, over 30 minutes in the course of the game. And he wanted it. Like, you know, this is sort of what you would expect from a captain of a team trying to elevate their game, lead by example. We've seen previous captains in Vancouver do this. Bo Horvat, for the few times that he got to see playoff action, elevated his game. On this show, we used to describe him as sort of a modern day playoff Trevor Linden. Mm-hmm. Henrik Sedin did something, much the same. Quinn Hughes. Okay.
Yeah. 28-33.
So, yeah. Like in the third period. So he starts his shift at 106, and he ends it at 144. He's then back on the ice 30 seconds later, goes for 30 seconds. Back on the ice 30 seconds later, goes for over a minute. Back on the ice in a minute, goes for 3 almost.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Right. And then he
was not giving up.
He does get himself a breather. Back on the ice at 11:03, goal gets scored at 11:27. Back on the ice at 11:43, goes for just under a minute. Half a second later, on the ice for almost another minute. Less than half a second later, on the ice. Like, it's just nonstop. Like, his longest shift was 2:43, but he was getting like off the ice maybe to splash some water in his face, only to get back on.
Yeah. He was relentless. JT Miller was pretty relentless as it goes as well. Yeah. I kind of expecting nothing less. Like, Quinn Hughes is going to literally die out there if that helps the team.
Well, it felt like he'd be willing to, make that sacrifice. Unfortunately, the Vancouver Canucks rally did fall short. They had a couple of chances. They just could not get that puck to go over the goal line. And Edmonton, to their credit, bent and did not break. So congratulations to the Edmonton Oilers. As much as I hate to say it, you're off to the Western Conference Final, where you're getting to take on the Dallas Stars, which we'll maybe, talk about momentarily. But what are your thoughts on this Vancouver Canucks season?
I mean, we were not expecting in October. We were not expecting.
Oh, come on!
Round.
We were totally the most optimistic podcast there is in the Smealosphere. Let me tell you.
Our tongues were firmly in cheek when we called ourselves a playoff podcast in October. Like, we were not expecting Canucks to make, through one round of the playoffs.
I don't think we were expecting the Vancouver Canucks to make a round.
Yeah, we were definitely expecting another bubble type team. Maybe they make the playoffs. We've had a really fun season. Canucks have led the league. They've left the conference and they've won their division. Like, it's been a very, exciting season. Honestly, the playoffs have been very exciting too. I will say, a lot of what made the season exciting, a lot of the players and the play that made the season exciting wasn't quite there in the playoffs, so Canucks honestly fought tooth and nail to get to where they did in the playoffs, considering the fact that through injury or form, the magic they had in the season wasn't there.
Yeah.
So, honestly, they got further in the playoffs than they should have, given all that. But, yeah, I'm trying to look at it as the start of something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, let's be very realistic. If you had come to me and said, hey, Chris, Vancouver Canucks are going to win the division, and they're going to go to Game 7 in the second round, would you take it? Sure, no problem. I mean, what have you been smoking? I mean, it would have been that type of conversation. I would not have believed it. And I get that, you know, I have been told I'm a pessimistic fan and therefore I should hand in my membership Canucks bandwagon because, you know, that's what the gatekeepers say. But realistically, when you looked at this team comparative to the team previous, there wasn't a significant amount of difference to say, yeah, that player going to elevate. Now, Rick Tocchet was obviously a wild card, getting a full offseason and a full preseason as opposed to coming in late in the season or mid-season as he did. So maybe I was unfair to discount his impact on the team. But whatever Rick was selling, this team bought it. They bought it, and they kept coming back. And yeah, you and I joked tongue in cheek that this was a playoffs podcast when the Vancouver Canucks seemed to win for no real, like, I can totally tell you this is why they're winning. Even from an advanced analytics perspective. I mean, it's like they're playing out of their weight class. Like, this bubble is eventually going to burst. This team will probably come back to reality. And I think we as a collective fan base, we're waiting for that. And it did sort of happen way later than anyone had imagined. So again, I have to think that, yes, the Vancouver Canucks didn't win the Stanley Cup. Therefore, the season itself is an unsuccessful season. But realistically, this has to be a very successful season. And I hope, beyond hope, that is a start to something progressive. And that is my worry, is this like the bubble where we suddenly had hope without realistically understanding the Canucks had the bubble because of what was happening and what got them into it? I know that this is different. I'm really hoping they've got the Kool-Aid and everyone be drinking.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely said we've reflected on the bubble playoffs, and I think quite justifiably, quite differently. Like, that it was just a confluence of circumstances that this team was not ready for playoff longevity. Bo Horvat, as we said, had a monster playoffs. Everyone felt weird. They were in this weird bubble. Canucks made it into the playoffs because of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. Because of points percentage, they were on a downslide. Or probably about to go on one when the pandemic happened with injuries, etc. So, yeah, I do think has more substance, this team, than that. And a lot of that's to do with Quinn Hughes. It's to do with Pedersen and Rick Tocchet, but a huge amount of that is the backbone of the team in management, which is a lot more solid with Jim and Patrick.
Yeah. We're going to get into sort of things as it goes into the future and half full, half empty. And obviously over the course of the offseason, we're going to continue to bang that drum as the offseason progresses. But if there is anything that gives me pause, it's the fact that the Vancouver Canucks have the one thing we have been hoping for them to have in a long time, and that is a lot of contracts off the books. Mm-hmm. But why does that give me pause? Because the Vancouver Canucks are going to have a lot of contracts off the books. And going into free agency, it's a tough way to obviously hammer things out. Is there a pipeline? There certainly is. You know, you would probably know better than me as to who might be in Abbotsford and be ready to compete. One of the things that we were given a glimpse of is that the Vancouver Canucks have a real bright future in the crease and Artur Silovs. Like, if again, you had told me the Vancouver Canucks are going to go to Game 7 in the second round on the back of their third string goaltender.
Yeah.
I would have been like, again.
Like,
what have you been enjoying in your free time?
Archer Shilov's like decidedly an AHL goalie at the beginning of the season. Like, very firmly AHL goalie. And yeah, to get the Canucks through most of their playoff games. Like, that's crazy. And yeah, I think that solves one problem, maybe, in that they have a backup for next year. Like, I think we can be pretty confident in that.
Yeah. And, one final thing I just want to touch on as to how this Canucks season went. When the Vancouver Canucks are, doing that final sort of lap and salute in Rogers Arena, the fans have been standing, clapping, and you didn't have that in the past. Like,
it was definitely, this crowd was still sold.
Yeah, and Rick Tocchet, had said it best, is that this team had put pride back into the crest on the jersey, and that had been severely lacking over the past few years. Like, even the most optimistic fan at times struggled. But me, who I'll admit, kind of a pessimistic fan, if I was forced to choose, was saying, hey, the Canucks can do it. Don't count them out. Like, I haven't been saying that for a long time. It was nice. It was a nice feeling to have where you got this competitive team. And I, again, really hope that the future is a bright one. One thing I do know for certain, Anna, we're going to take ourselves a short break. You're listening to the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Anna and Chris.
Take hitting out of the game. You can't hit anymore, so don't do it.
The unsportsmanlike conduct, I want to get an explanation on that.
No kidding.
Because how do you get suspended for unsportsmanlike conduct?
Plus interference. There's no interference there. He had the puck.
Now, Madison never ever did that before. Now, why did he do it? And that because he was mad.
Well, your early favorite for the Calder Trophy, that's for sure. Elias Pettersson, you might even say your early favorite for the Hart Trophy.
Just to get back to your question, Elias is going to play plenty. He's going to get a lot of power play time. And yeah, I'm concerned about our offense. We lost 200-point players, and we've got to find a way to score.
So the Vancouver Canucks end-of-season press conference, which takes place on locker cleanout day, is where players and coaching staff and management come out, sit in front of the media, answer a few questions if they're so inclined, and shed light on stuff and things. Right?
Yeah.
It's a good
Yeah.
summary, I think.
Pretty much.
One of the things that I did on Threads was sort of articulate, the stuff and things as it pertained to injuries and what have you, because we don't get that level of detail until the season is over. And so I'm just going to quickly go through the summary as what I got tracked here. So the big question was, what's up with Petey? Petey had disclosed that he had been playing with a knee injury since about January. And if you look at his production sort of before January and then look at his production January onward, you can see a definitive shift. I know that some people are like, well, that's coincidental. I'm sure he had an injury. But as I think it was Taj1944 said on Twitter, it's not like Petey forgot to play hockey come January. Like, there was, I think most people understood something was at play. And, Friedman was talking about how what he had heard was that the way the injury is that the pain would sort of get worse and worse. Like, the only solution was rest, but the Canucks weren't in a position to give him that.
Yeah, it does seem like there was still, through a decent amount of January, still playing pretty high-end hockey, so it does seem like it was definitely tailing his play, tailed off right at the end of the season, so it definitely makes sense that fatigue was weighing on that injury and making it worse. Obviously, he took responsibility for that.
Yeah.
Said that his form wasn't great and that he does think that off-season rest will be a big part of coming back.
And I sort of want to go back to rewind a little bit. We didn't touch on this, but he got the answer to the question, who's going to fill in for Besser? Petey got elevated to that spot. And well, yeah, maybe the Miller-Pettersson combination didn't work as well as sort of the Miller-Besser did. Pettersson and Miller looked good together. Yeah. And Pettersson's game had been, elevated at a sort of place that we hadn't seen from him. And again, I think that goes to speak that you need to give him players.
Yeah, I mean, I do think he played a lot better in game 4 onwards with playing on back with Niels Hoglander and playing on the wing with Lindholm. So I do think that makes such a huge difference. Yeah, you've invested so much money in PD at this point. Invest in his success, right? That needs to be the lesson from this for sure.
Yeah. Brock Besser was asked about the blood clot, and he had explained that in the first game of round 2, he had blocked a shot, and that shot block left him with a pretty significant bruise. The leg developed some soreness. Sort of as the series had progressed, and they did some scans and realized that he had some small clots, but not significant enough that they felt that would prevent him from being in the lineup. After game 6, the pain became very significant. And when they, again, did the scans, they're like, no, the clot is much more significant. You cannot play. His instinct was, are you sure there's nothing you can do? And apparently he had to be, I don't know if talked into is the right, sort of phrase of words, but, heavily informed that it wasn't possible, which is good. He came to that realization. It's just, hockey culture and a guy who wants to give it his all. He is on blood thinners going in the summer. There are things he has to watch. He has to put himself in a position that he doesn't cut himself, doesn't, take a heavy knock, because there are some serious consequences to this when he's on blood thinners. But the early prognosis is that this will sort itself out, and then he'll in turn be able to resume off-season training at some point, and hopefully be back and ready to go come preseason. Murph also shared that Brock apparently had been playing with a broken finger since the first round. Brock didn't disclose that. Everyone was focused on the blood clots, but Murph said he had broken his finger in round 1. I don't think he said specifically when, but. No,
I'm sure the detectives have gone through the game footage and found the exact moment that it happened.
Yeah. Casey DeSmith was asked about his injury. So he felt his groin pop in game 3 of the first round.
Which is just the worst phrase I've ever heard, I think.
Well, okay. Having felt my groin pop, Anna, it's not as painful as it is for you to hear it. It's even more painful to
I'm sure.
It. But he elected to not play because of the fact that Demko was out, and they felt that it would be better safe than sorry to allow him the time to recover. Whereas if he were to play and then be injured significantly, it puts the Canucks into a different situation.
Yeah.
But as luck would have it, Seeloffs play really well, so well that when DeSmith was healthy again and could have started, Seeloffs wasn't really giving the team a chance to go in and put DeSmith back in. I can't point out any instance where you'd be like, oh, DeSmith should have been in that. Someone might say, oh, after game 6, he let in so many. If you're going to make that change, then...
Yeah.
It's not like Pickerton for Skinner. That wasn't the situation. Anyhow, Demko was asked about his injury. Apparently, if the Vancouver Canucks made it to the Western Conference Final, he was ready to go. Now...
Yeah. Whether he was ready to go or whether he would have gone.
Yeah.
I think there might be a difference there.
It didn't officially come out as to what ailed him. But I think we talked about it on an episode shortly after he was injured. And I had said how when I had, torn my ACL, the orthopedic surgeon had explained that, yes, the only way to fix it is through surgery. But once the swelling were to come down, you do have a means to manage the joint through uses of braces and stuff like that. So it could have, I'm not saying that that's the problem. I don't know, but anyhow, Demko said he would be ready. We'll never know. And he thinks he'll be back and ready to go in the preseason. Ian Cole was asked if he was hurt. He chose not to say that he was, but it's well understood that he got injured sometime in the second round. Ian Cole had a rough series.
He had a rough go of things.
We were joking on social media because pucks were going in off him. He was missing assignments. Clearly his game had started to hurt, and that makes sense. He was hurting. And where did that all sort of coincide? Against the Oilers. But the one player who was asked about an injury, Philip Hronek, eventually got to the answer that he was not injured. But how did this all sort of come out? Well, Jeff Patterson had asked the question of Philip Hronek with some preamble. Were you hurt? And Philip Hronek, very, I don't want to be here. Dumb question, whatever. Again, I shouldn't put, words into his mouth or
but that was the
feelings
attitude.
in his mind. No. And J-Pat followed that up with, come on. We've respected, the fact that you haven't wanted to talk to us all season. You've come out here today. We're just trying to get an answer. And Hronek's response was, what do you want me to tell you? I answered your question. I said I was not injured. Now, Thomas Drance has pointed out that the context is somewhat lacking because there was conversation before and after that Philip Hronek had sort of taken part in. It was just this particular sort of sound bite as being indicative of an issue, though Drance, to his credit, said, probably not the best answer. And the way things have transpired over the season was Hronek had said no media. He wasn't talking to anyone. But one, he was injured, at least according to Murph, who said there is a reason why we had not seen a one-timer from him until Game 7 of Round 2. So I honestly, to goodness, don't understand why Hronek wouldn't say, yeah, it's hurt.
Yeah.
Here's what it was. Because it's actually a non-story if he says this and this. And then give the one-word answers.
Yeah, while I respect that you can be annoyed, you can be frustrated at your play, at the team's play, regardless of your injury status, that you expected better at yourself or wanted better at yourself, even in an injury. I also just know the fact that the media have to ask questions, and the media aren't just doing it for their own amusement. That's the frustration I feel sometimes with players that just see the media as a nuisance rather than they're giving information to the fans. They're not a separate entity to the fans completely. They're writing the story. So what would we do without we would have no information without the media. And if you're not going to talk to the media, then you can't control fans and media's reaction to you.
Yeah.
You can't get frustrated if people get annoyed at you. That's going to happen if you're not going to talk to media and not give them information.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. It just, bookending that to another Canucks defenseman who had a great conversation with the media. It's like night and day. Before we get into that conversation, I want to touch on a couple of things from Tocchet and Alvin. So Tocchet was asked about Petey's injury because Petey had said hey, I've been hurt since January. And so there was some thought well, wait, you gave maintenance nights and rest to a handful of players not named Elias Pettersson. And Tocchet's response was, we talked to the trainers and the doctors, and they make they inform us as to what kind of, it's tendonitis. You said it was tendonitis, which, maybe it was, I don't know. But it felt to me that Tocchet was downplaying the injury, which is weird when Petey is telling you he was playing hurt and it was hurting his game. it's also further complex that at one point during the postseason, Tocchet called Petey out and said he had to move his feet. Well, if he's been dealing with a knee injury, that may be why his feet are slow. I mean, I'm not a doctor. And who knows?
And obviously, Rick Tocchet was pretty harsh on Petey during the playoffs. Not maybe saying anything that fans weren't saying themselves about Petey needing to step up, which I think is true as well. But
and I
there's some points that you think you give him some leeway.
Yeah, did Pettersson overreact to an injury? I mean, I don't think you or I will ever feel that there's a wrong position for a player to take if they feel they're unable to go or unable to go at 100%. If you're hurt, you're hurt. We want hockey culture to change to understand that there's more to life than the very microcosm, short period of time that you're a professional hockey player. Now, obviously, injuries are on a sliding scale, but at the end of the day, if you're hurt, you're hurt. Plain and simple. Tocchet calling him out, maybe feeling that that's the motivation that PD needs. Who am I to say it's not? Because I don't know either one of those individuals.
Yeah.
The level that they know each other. I hope that PD, to his word says, yeah, I'm going to take this in the off season and it's going to fuel my desire to be even better next year. That's great. A fully fueled PD who's got a little chip on his shoulder elevating his game is a good thing for the Vancouver Canucks. In fact, I look at this postseason. There were parts of Petey's game that I don't recall seeing. Like, first of all, he got a charging penalty on the play, but like throwing the reverse hit and the fact that he was throwing his body, like I don't recall seeing Petey do stuff like that. It felt like he was almost taking a little bit of the
compensating. Do you think?
Yeah, but if let's say he takes that, and I was going to say a little bit of the bite that JT Miller brings to the ice and puts that into Petey's game, I honestly think that makes for a better Petey.
Definitely, because I think we've talked about before, like a couple of years ago when he started playing more defensive minutes and sort of defensive responsibility, like that was a huge step up. He's built a lot of muscle, so physically he has been more dominant. But yes, like it does make sense the knee injury in that he's not the same like small player he once was, and yet he wasn't always as strong on the puck as he has been.
Yeah. Patrick Allvin had been asked sort of with, the vast number of players who are going to be free agents in only shape or form. What does that mean? And to him, it simply means like we're going to go over with and make some hard calls. But it almost occurred to me that we're not desperate to bring all the players back, but we're going to make tough decisions to ensure this team improves. I don't necessarily get that sense we ever got that out of a Jim Benning postseason or end of season press conference. Because again, we were only ever 2 years away from being good. So it was a different sort of conversation that was taking place. That said, Allvin, I feel, understood the severity of the number of contracts the Vancouver Canucks will have to.
Sure. But Jim Benning, like pretending there was never any problems, got you scared that the problems were even bigger than you thought.
Yeah.
That there's like even worse problems, whereas Patrick Allvin at least acknowledges there are issues that we need to address. It's just, maybe underselling it a little bit.
Garland, love the guy. I mean, I don't know if he bleeds Canucks blue, but I wouldn't be shocked if he did.
Yeah, like for a player from Massachusetts, he seems very settled and very affected by that loss, and he does seem like willing to fight for this team.
Are you going to get over this? And his response, I still haven't gotten over losses in junior. You think I'm going to get over this one? I mean, what's not to like about that? Like that's the type. I mean, okay, maybe there's more on the psychological side of things that I'm not a doctor that can deal with, but I would like a player who uses that as motivation.
Yeah,
right?
I think there's so much like about Connor Garland, including his style of play and
the
fact
net guard.
The net guard, we love that. Let's learn from our short, safe king. And he has nice hair, so and he likes dogs.
JT Miller was going off about how, like, to him, the Vancouver market is second to none. He, I think, came to a realization of what this market does when it embraces you as a player. He hasn't had, prior to this year, a season where Canucks fans showed him appreciation. Some of that was, due to his play, his sort of attitude.
Yeah.
But I think more importantly, the team around him was in a bad state. But then in that one good season, and the fact that, he had commented how hearing the fans chant his name, and that was a thing. Like when Al Murdoch, said who scored the goal, it's JT, and the fans said Miller. Yeah. There's no other Canucks player that happens to. Little off the rails, but somewhat related. JT Miller and Kirk McLean happened to take on the Vancouver Whitecaps Miami match, and when they were put on the screen, a JT Miller chant started in BC Place.
And they both chugged their beers, so
yeah,
which is probably the best entertainment of the night.
Oh, and it was like they knew they were going to do it. They cheers and then the chug, which just, too bad the Whitecaps couldn't give them a result. But back on the rails here. Elias Lindholm was asked if he's going to come back, and the answer we got was, got to talk to my agent, my family, see, what things are after I've slept on it a few times. Like the most non-committal, I'm probably not coming back answer there could be.
And like Elias Lindholm, I was always a big believer in his play, and he had a great playoffs, I have to say. But yeah, the difference between him and some of the other players, like Teddy Bluger's not signed next year, but he's still posting on Instagram, like, we'll be back. Like, this team, he has such high belief in this team.
Yeah.
Like,
and
I don't think
asked,
Lindholm is there.
Yeah, Bluger was like, hey, you want to come? He's like, I want to be back. I really hope that I'm there. Like, it's a...
Zadorov was talking about his kids in Vancouver and everything he likes about it,
Yeah, like the Lindholm answer was actually one of the few answers of that sort of question that stood out as, he could have got, and again, I'm not saying it's a done deal. I'm not saying he's out to Boston or wherever the heck he's going to go. There was probably a better way to have responded, to leave it open-ended with the, 51-49 split, as opposed to the current more like 60-40 and 60-9 Vancouver. But yeah, you have in the rundown, is Lindholm gone? And I'm thinking he's gone.
I think he's gone. We don't know for sure, like, who knows?
Well, and apparently there are players on the team who are trying to convince him already to stay here. Wow. And
there's a lot of belief in this locker room, which is really encouraging.
When was the last time the Canucks had this level of belief? It would have probably been the 11-12.
Yeah.
That,
and the 12.
10-11, 11-12.
And the 11-12, it's probably became increasingly more desperation, especially after the 12 playoffs.
Yeah. So Zadorov? Okay, you listeners in the show know I'm a big fan of the Big Z. Or Big Z. Whatever.
Z. It just sounds better.
Yeah. He gets this market. He gets Canadian markets. Let's just be honest. He was asked and he's like, oh, hockey in Canada is just at a whole different level. But he understands the assignment as to what it means to wear a Vancouver Canucks jersey. The fan base feels a little bit slighted, whether right or wrong, about a variety of different things. And the guy gets it. He was asked as to whether or not he priced himself out of the market. And his response was, what should I be making?
Yeah.
It's a question better suited to my agent and I. Don't worry about it. Stop listening to the media in Edmonton.
Yeah.
Right? So Canucks fans are like, check mark.
Yeah. Slagging off Calgary because it's not even the biggest city in Alberta. Just like, it's funny.
He's like, hockey in Canada is a whole different level. Like, it was unbelievable in Calgary, nothing like Vancouver. And let's be honest, Calgary is not even the best team in Alberta. Like, he gets it. And I was joking around C4 Discord, throw all the money at him, give him every darn penny, pay him stupid money. I don't care. I do. I don't want him to get stupid money. And I would just worry there's teams out there that will offer stupid money. But if you were to go and say, hey, Chris, you can only have one of Zadorov or Hronek, which would it be? And I would take Zadorov in a heartbeat.
Some
of that is the Philip Hronek response, but I'd rather have a guy who, it's like Kevin Bieksa. Kevin Bieksa was going to go down with the ship. Zadorov seems to be the type of guy who's going to go down with the ship.
Yeah, and hopefully the ship is not sinking. Hopefully the ship is completely seaworthy. There are no weird holes in the decking, etc. But I think the fact that I just called it decking shows I know nothing about boats. But yeah, I think we've realized for quite a while that we should not be the ones to pay Hronek that money. Like, he's going to get a chunk of money. We haven't seen him perform out.
The thing about Hronek, though, is that he is not an unrestricted free agent. He is a restricted free agent.
True.
So, I don't think a team's going to come out there and offer sheet the guy. But if they do, congratulations.
Yes. You are now a whatever that is not a Vancouver Canuck.
We will take the picks off your hand because we're a little bit light in that. I think, the rumor is that right now, Philip Hronek could very well be traded. I think it was Friedman had commented that Carolina could be a destination.
And there's been some heavy talk about Carolina and what Canucks might like to send and get back. But it's another competing team, which is a hard thing. Like, obviously, Hronek's a very good defenseman.
If the Vancouver Canucks face the Hurricanes in a Stanley Cup final, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. No, I'm more just thinking from the point of view of, they need to win now. Do they want to spend, $9 million on an extension?
Yeah.
We'll have to see.
Yeah. Anything else that came out of the end of season presser that you wanted to touch on?
No. Like you say, the general mood and belief in this team was good to see, and we want that to continue. But yes, again, like you say, there's a lot of work to do between now and puck drop in October.
Yeah. Sort of on that note, we won't go into this conversation in any great detail because, again, we got a whole lot of hockey left.
A lot of time.
Off-season hockey talk to manufacture. The Vancouver Canucks currently have Teddy Bluger, Dakota Joshua, Sam Lafferty, Elias Lindholm, Ian Cole, Mark Friedman, Tyler Myers, and Nikita Zadorov, as well as Casey DeSmith, all as unrestricted free agents. In the RFA camp, they've got Philip Hronek. Now, Philip Hronek is arbitration eligible, so technically speaking, he could go in and, put the Canucks in a position that he gets more money than the Canucks are willing to pay. And then you have Artur Silos, who is also a restricted free agent. And if we go then down into the Baby Nucks, Linus Carlson, arbitration eligible RFA, Aid McDonough is a free agent, Sheldon Dries is an unrestricted free agent, Nick Cicek, Philip Johansson, Cole McWard, Jet Wu, RFAs, Matt Irwin, UFA, and Zach Sawchenko is going to be a UFA as well. Zach Sawchenko, the guy who could have seen playoff hockey had Artur Silos taken a knock.
Yeah, Zach Sawchenko, the guy that said, screw you, Anna, I can play in the AHL playoffs. I'm a guy. So, maybe next year. There's definitely a few baby Canucks that need some contracts. And speaking of baby Canucks, they have a new head coach.
They do. So Colleton left. Essentially, come down to something very simple. He looked up at Tocchet doing what he was doing, winning the Jack Adams and all that jazz, and decided that if I stick around here, I'm never going to get a job in Vancouver. So maybe I can get an NHL gig somewhere else sooner.
And yeah, he's a very good coach. I think Canucks were keen to keep him around. He realized maybe not quite the best place for me to develop, which is fair.
Yeah, totally fair. And as you pointed out, like, he's a good coach. So he has gone on to pastures. I don't think he's got a job anywhere yet. So they're not necessarily greener. But the Vancouver Canucks wasted no time to find his replacement. They made a phone call out east, spoke to the Toronto Maple Leafs, I guess, got permission, who knows what. Manny Malhotra's coming home, Anna. Manny is coaching the Abbotsford Canucks.
Yeah. Honestly, have loved Jeremy Colleton, so I was pretty upset when the rumors were swirling that he was leaving. But, like, yeah, this is a way to make it better for sure. Manny Malhotra was such a smart coach when he was behind the bench in Vancouver. Or not behind the bench, I guess, because that's why he went to Toronto. But, like, his work with the Canucks was really good. He's really smart. I think he could be really good at developing our young talent in Abbotsford. I'm sure the Sedins were part of that conversation as to getting
most definitely
Manny in, given their hands in the operation.
Yeah, well, I mean, we also think, who is the GM and assistant GM, or GM of the Abbey Canucks and assistant GM of the Vancouver Canucks? Ryan Johnson got some experience with Manny. Chris Higgins, who's still in the organization, got some experience with Manny. Like,
I guess he gets to go behind the camera again, or away from the camera, now that the playoffs are over.
But I like it. I think, it also speaks well of Manny Malhotra's progression from being in the Canucks organization, which historically the Vancouver Canucks are a home for life. For former players who want to be involved, gets that experience in Vancouver, translates it into a job in Toronto, in arguably the center of the Canadian hockey universe, whether we like it or not.
Or the whole universe, I think.
Yeah, maybe. And now comes back to get that head coaching experience, behind the Abbotsford bench. If there's one thing that irritates me about this, he's going to probably get a head coaching gig in the NHL and have to leave the Canucks organization at some point. Again.
For the third time.
I like Manny.
Yeah. I mean, let's not wish him away. Like...
No. I hope it's just that, like...
Yeah,
I think Rick Tocchet, like...
Realistically, sure, but, like... we never know what's going to happen.
Sure,
Manny may spend a long time in Abbotsford, and then Vancouver's ready for a new head coach, so we'll see.
He might, but honest, if he's going to be that successful, like, let's say he's that successful that he's going to spend a long time in Abbotsford, there's going to be an NHL team that's going to say, hey, we have a job for you.
Yeah, we don't know the future, but yeah, I'm excited for the immediate future with him in Abbotsford.
Anywho, a whole lot has happened in the course of the week. Probably not a whole lot's going to happen for the Vancouver Canucks between now and the next episode in 2 weeks. And I say that and watch them like some form of blockbuster trade or something like that. Because there are teams doing the trade dance in the NHL right now.
Yeah.
Those who are not in the postseason. But you and I, well, let me rephrase that. I'll be back in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, we haven't decided yet about me, if I'm allowed.
Well, I mean, we've already, as a, Discord, C4 Discord, decided that Axel's toque needed to be burned with fire. Mm-hmm. I don't think it would be appropriate to burn you with fire.
Thanks, I think.
Right? But maybe we have to fire you for cursing the Canucks.
Into the sun.
I wouldn't want to fire you into the sun. Okay. You and I have the pale complexion. That just wouldn't be nice.
No, it wouldn't be good.
But we will be back in with the episode of C4 in 2 weeks. We get to talk about what's going on. Right now in the Western Conference Final, it's 1-1, Dallas and Edmonton. Out east, I think.
Yeah, New York won today.
Yeah.
In
so
overtime.
New York's up 2-1. Edmonton's all upset that Dallas is getting all the calls.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Because Edmonton are the Angels of the NHL.
Yeah. But when we come back in 2 weeks, we'll be talking about a Stanley Cup final that could potentially be well in play or over. Who do you have in the Stanley Cup final out of these final
Dallas.
4 teams? New York, Dallas?
Yeah.
So, I had it Florida, Dallas until tonight. Tonight, if we had recorded this before that midday game, I would have said Florida, Dallas, but I'm going to agree. New York and Dallas.
Yeah, I think I picked New York in the final for quite a while. So,
well, I think if I recall, I had said New York or Florida are coming out of the East, and that's the team to win. And I think we collectively said we thought Dallas was coming out of the West, even as Canucks fans.
I didn't say that, so I'll own that. That
No?
like,
you thought the Canucks were going to go through?
no, not at all. I just mean I wasn't sure about that first round.
Okay, no. But once we got out of the first round, I think first round is where the upsets occur.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, upsets can occur at any point, but first round is where they occur. So, okay. If you have thoughts and opinions on anything that we've said on the show, the best place to share them is in C4 Discord, discord.io/C4 podcast. Alternatively, you can engage with us on social media. We're at the C4 podcast in many of them, except on Threads, we were at the Real C4 podcast. You can go to c4podcast.com. That's our website. It in turn has our entire back catalog, a bunch of links, and if you go to buymeacoffee.com/C4 podcast, you can spend a few dollars to collectively buy us a coffee, or as Anna and I like to call it,
Buy me a pint.
And that helps us not only enjoy a beverage on your dime, so to speak, as a thank you, but we do use the money that you provide us to fund the show, pay for hosting, the software we use to record the show and all that jazz. Essentially, every dollar you give us goes into that. And that just ensures that we can keep things going. Last but not least, Anna, final thoughts, words of wisdom? Anything you wish to share?
In exciting sports news, the PWHL is in its final game for the Walter Cup final round. Could have been decided tonight. In fact, if you're a player for Minnesota, you thought you had won the Walter Cup tonight. Turns out, after the game-winning goal in overtime, when all the players were celebrating on the ice, it was called back.
No goal? Oh,
no
geez.
goal. So, Boston scored in overtime. They live to fight another day. It goes down to the final game, Game 5. So, it's pretty exciting. I'm looking forward to getting into the PWHL a bit more next season. Obviously, a Boston team living to fight another day is not necessarily positive, but yeah, it's an exciting league they've got there. So I'm excited to dig into it.
Cool. And final words of wisdom for me. Enjoy summer. It's time to rest, relax, recover. We've got a long off season in front of us, but it's not as long as it once was. So on behalf of Anna, A4603, myself, Chris at Lightforce, I'm signing off this episode with the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast with We Out.